Hi everyone. It's been a while since I did the introduction videos for CodeFlow, and I've added quite a few enhancements and made some changes to project management, navigation and other elements in the studio since then, and I'd like to take you through some of those. But before we get started, let's have a quick review of what CodeFlow is and what it does. So with CodeFlow you can create flowcharts of your application. It it represents how your code is flowing. So here, for example, we have a flow chart that represents how a customer is saved in the Suite CRM application. It shows how the client application has a form, it does some validation, handles errors, submits, and then hands over to the PHP code, which does the database saving. If we want to see how that's created, we go to the Codementus homepage and we say we want to open that flowchart. We select the file, open it, and here it is. So you can see we can add elements, we can join them up, we can move them around, we can edit data in each of these. So each of these has an attribute called CodeFlow ID, which represents that step name. So when we're triggering an event in our diagrams from our code, we pass in the diagram name and this step name to show which part of the flowchart is being executed. So if we go back quickly here to CodeFlow and then into Suite CRM, we can go and edit a customer. And if we click save, we can see how these steps are triggered within CodeFlow. Every time we click save, we pass in a process ID, which is unique to all the events in that process. So this is passed in, and each one of these events has the same process ID, which helps us identify it from any other processes. To see how we do that within our code, here's the JavaScript for Suite CRM. Here's an event being triggered in CodeFlow. So in it, we pass in the flowchart name along with the step name, process ID, and some information if you want to pass in some information for that event. Same on the PHP side. We fire it off, same thing. We've got the process ID, flowchart name, and step name with some payload information. So if we want to see what that information looks like, we can go and select it like this, and we can see we can pass in JSON or just plain text. So let's go and trigger a few more of these processes within Suite CRM. We can trigger a validation. We can see it's hit the validation flow. We can hit it again. Let's go and fill in information. We'll save that. We can see it's gone record saved again. And there's just one flow in this flowchart that we haven't hit, so let's create a new contact and give it the same name, and then it detects that it's a possible duplicate and you may want to save or cancel. I'll cancel for now. So we can see we've hit the first elements on the client side 5 times, and it's got off in the various directions. So here we can isolate each of the processes and see how that's flowing. So if we want to go into this in a little more detail, we might say, okay, we have this entire flow saved to the database. We can say we want to isolate that from the rest of the processes so we get a clean view of it. And then we want to see a chart of the execution times. So the first elements in the flow are pretty trivial, not much to see. The submit form is taking 0.36, almost 0.37 of a second, so we may want to look at that in terms of performance. Saving to the database is taking over half a second, and overall the entire process is taking just over a second. We may want to come back and try and fine-tune the performance of that. So we can remove the process. We can search through the data that's been passed in. So this will search through the payload data and identify what steps have this information. We may want to save this entire session for future reference. So we can go ahead and give this a name, save it, and it appears on the left. So if we go and refresh the application, open up the flowchart and click on this demo session, we can see all of that information again, and we can go back and inspect it and have a look through what's going on. So that's a quick overview of what it does and how it's working right now. I'm going to follow up with a little more detail on how to get to this point. But for now, thanks for watching. Thanks a lot.